barely awake
I've
and
never coached.
it's like 7.
That's a fancy
I just
one.
figured.
It is nice.
It's very light.
It is.
Right, you're good to go.
So
Okay,
we
excellent. Okay, great, everybody, it's 7 o'clock, so we're gonna get started. I'm Eileen Cook, I'm the vice chair, filling in as running the meeting with Glenn's absence tonight. I will call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock, and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Do we have any public comment tonight? Okay. Then we can move on to new business. So to start, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to call with the Board of Ed members, particularly Bob and Dr. Brill. Ken is at the table, but we need others who would like to fit to join to come to the table for the Board of Ed presentation discussion.
I can sit on the side if you guys need to. I'm really not just a spectator. We're okay.
Yeah, Dan said it's going to be 5 minutes. Okay, commercials.
We're taking notes.
Okay, fine.
Behave.
Yeah.
That's what they said at the table.
Yeah, that's all response.
Yeah.
Can't fit all of us anyway.
Dan's making. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I know that the Board of Ed budget has been well reviewed by the Board of Ed Finance Committee. I know that we've received the questions and comments that have been reviewed by the Board of Ed, so that's been a really helpful document for us to look through. And I know that there have been discussions about some of the numbers moving around as we look at the fuel costs and using a different estimate for that. We had the updated numbers for the health insurance, so that's moving the needle. I know the first selectman's initial cut was 500,000, and the Board of Selectmen moved 100,000 back in. So the numbers have moved much more in your favor with those other savings, but I think maybe we're going to discuss tonight.
Yeah, so I thought I would recap that
Yeah, please.
for you, just make sure we all understand those numbers.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have a couple other things I wanted to talk about, if you don't mind.
The floor is yours.
So first of all, we asked the entire board to come, but I just need to make sure we're clear that the Board of Education is not in session this evening. So we can all be here, but we can't actually do business, right? So I will be the spokesman. And I've asked Rosa, who's the chair of our Finance Committee, and Joy, who's the chair of our Facilities Committee, and also on the Finance Committee, to join me here with Dr. Brilla and Mr. Post in case you all would have any questions. So,
Okay.
I just wanted to start with a couple of just general comments because and I think it's the context, and we may have spoken about it a little bit at our February 9th meeting, but right now is a challenging time to be running a school district, mostly because the kids have taken a big step backwards academically and socially in the 2 years of COVID that we all had to deal with. You know, between being out of school, being hybrid, masking all the time, and you can see and feel it palpably. So when we were actually going through our budget, we probably could have brought forward 5, 10, 15 additional positions because there's a lot of academic recovery that needs to go on. So we brought forward a budget that basically has no additional positions. We've repurposed some positions to move some things around to best fit the needs. We've got our entire district as a #1 priority, focusing on, oh, that's somebody trying to get in
That's
on this.
Dan on his way in.
Okay. Trying to focus on academic recovery as a first priority. And we're going to do that with the staff that we have. We'll start seeing our results of those activities when we do some of the standardized testing in the spring, right? So sometimes it's hard to get that real measurement of how successful you are until you actually go through the assessment process. So we're going to be very carefully looking at that when we do those in the spring, and in the summer months we start getting the results back. So this budget is There's a term used in one of the meetings, are positions necessary? Every position we have is more than necessary right now. We are really don't want to be going in a reduction of staff mode in the environment where we're trying to get kids caught back up. It's not a normal year. And so I just wanted to say that to you all, because in context, sometimes it's easy to look at budgets and think about it like it was a normal, an everyday year that we're dealing with. And you could have a discussion about, well, what could you do, with less, right? And this is a tough year to be thinking about less, and that's a struggle for us. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Dr. Brill, to that.
I think we talked so much.
Had your language.
You're speaking my speak, Bob. Thank you.
We have in the ARPA, our BESSER stuff that we did, this is a year we're folding in some of the funding in that, but every one of those things in that program were all about academic recovery. Summer schools, the coaches that are really getting us some unique experiences to the kids. You can go down that list of positions that we talked about in the presentation. They were all focused on, getting that in. The behavioral specialists we talked about, again, that's a behavioral, social, emotional type of skill that the kids really need that support. So, class sizes, we were very happy to have the class sizes land in the range that we needed them to land in. So everything in the structure is built to get us where we need to get to. And we're doing it at the same time we're going into a new school. So it's, which I get to tour again tomorrow, which will be fun. Are you going to be able to come?
I'm hoping to be.
Oh, good.
You'll have me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Meet you right at the back of the gym.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
And we'll have a hard hat for you, ready to go.
All right.
And I'll bring my hard hat, it's in the car now, so. So it's, in that environment, we're dealing with this $400,000 reduction that we have. Ken, do you have the sheets that we walked through? Maybe we can hand those out. What I wanted to do is just quickly talk through the numbers on what we've seen already. You've probably seen these in pieces here and there, but so against the $400,000 reduction that's been taken against the budget we submitted, right, which is where we stand today. The first item is the health insurance at 7.1%. Mr. Post has run those numbers in detail. We assume the same mix of the staff we have this year. That can always change up and down. That's one of the challenges you have in managing a good employee population. But it's the right assumption. And that gets us $198,000, almost $199,000. And that, I think, Ken, is reasonably final at this point. What would you say the status of finality is on that?
Well, they don't do the final renewal rates until April sometime. But for them to be giving us a number as opposed to a range gives me great confidence that will be at or very close to the number.
Yeah, I think that's the same assumption on the town side,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so we have the same insurance for anybody who's listening, and on both the town and the school.
Did
So.
they give a number last year or a range during budget time?
They were very reluctant to give us anything last year.
Gotcha.
And this year, they actually went as far as to, went to a meeting back in January when we lowered our assumption from 12 to 10%, where they actually shared the trending claims data with everybody who was on the call. And they'd never been that transparent with us before. So I think they heard from a lot of people last year who were dissatisfied with the whole process of getting our renewal rates. And they seem to have made a great effort this year to do better by us.
And part of that we can't forget is Bob and Tara and Glenn had a note regarding that.
Okay.
Advocating for not just Brookfield but all towns. We need to know those numbers.
It's Marcia.
And the state controller called actually and spoke with Marcia and kind of in response to our letter, so that was really nice to see.
So we, hopefully we'll start having better headlights.
Yeah.
Last year, I'll just echo what Ken said, last year, they were, if they were saying anything, it could be, wide ranges.
Yeah.
This year they started 8 to 12, then they went 8 to 10, and then they came out with, for planning purposes, you should, and budgeting purposes, you should use 7.1.
Okay.
So that's, and those are the words on the letters.
Yes.
So it's different and early, so. The heating oil savings this is, Mr. Rooney's asked us to run the numbers at 275. I sat through your, review last night, and I actually love the structure that you're working on. Right now, I asked Ken where we are, and, on heating oil, we're monitoring the spot price, and it's running right around $3 a
Mhm.
gallon right now. We had booked at 333.
Okay.
So if we, it's a little bit of a gamble whether it's gonna keep going down, and if so, how much. But I think the structure that was built, we're partnering with the town side to, we'll book the budget at whatever level with the agreement that if
Yeah, we've
it
already
comes
talked,
in.
we'll have a contingency for fuel oil for both sides, town and school, based on the $3, and
Yeah.
that will offset any changes, and we can just hope that it goes lower, but if it does go up to $3 again, then.
And I will also say that comparable to that, diesel fuel's a little different price structure, but on the school side, we have school buses, right? So we provide the fuel that's also tied to that, and I'd like to include that in that same equation. So there's 60,000 on the heating oil, and if you all, a comparable number to 275 a gallon is 285 a gallon for diesel fuel.
281. It's about this, about 6 cent
281, I'm
difference.
sorry.
Yeah.
6 cent difference, so we would suggest that we include that in the equation, and that would be another $21,000, so. Those three things add up to $280,287, which is,
120 short.
it's a big move from where we were just literally the end of January.
Yeah.
That's measured weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we've been, of course, we are very aware of $400,000 as the reduction. Ken has been, we have not deliberated as a board on it yet. We usually don't do deliberations on cuts until we get to the end of the process and we know what the actual picture looks like, because there's quite a process that we have to run through. But Mr. Post has been talking to the principals and saying, where are there places we can, push and shove, and particularly focusing on non-labor. And so far, we've found things in the 20 to 25 range that we might be able to go do that doesn't touch the job of people.
So is that changing priorities or taking things out, or is that tightening up?
I'll give you an
numbers?
example.
Okay.
It's a very, we are under contract to do something called Ippy Dippy.
Oh, I remember hearing about that.
Which is it's a teacher-governed professional development. The contract says up to 20,000. We always budgeted 20,000. We haven't spent the 20,000 in the last couple of years. So the question is, do you budget less than your contract? And that's what you would do, right? And you budget in a more reasonable, I won't call it a more reasonable
But
level.
more, closer to
It's
actual.
closer to what history has said,
Yeah.
right? And that could save you a little bit. Our current budget that we submitted had it at the contracted level, right, at 20,000. So that's the kind of stuff you're banging around on, is those types of, okay, where can you lean into it a little bit? And it's not a lot of money. I'll just tell you, there's not a magic bullet out there that says we can find another $120,000. So once you get to that, you're probably talking about hours, right, and people type of roles. I don't know where we would do it. I couldn't answer that question right now. It would be a big deliberation on where we would do it. But one teaching position with benefits is probably what you're talking about. Or maybe a mix of, half times here and half times there. And it's not something we would like to do, but I just needed to know the kind of range of what we're staring at, right, as a board.
Okay, so now we're looking closer to 100. difference if we take the.
Yeah, and so you could probably lean into it somewhat, but it's, anything past that will be something that will affect programs. So that's kind of the,
Can you move closer to the microphone? I guess people are having trouble hearing.
that's fine.
Sorry, thank you.
I will talk into the microphone. Can you hear me better now? Give me a little thumbs up icon if you can hear me
Dan's having
better.
trouble with his microphone.
So that's kind of.
Much better, he said.
Okay, good. So that's kind of where we are. Good news is, 280 out of 400 already resolved. Not a lot of other room to maneuver. We built a pretty tight budget, as you've seen
Yeah.
through the scrubbing. So little bits here and there, but the rest we'll have to deliberate when we get there. We would ask for your help in putting a little bit more back so I don't have to go take further cuts, and the board would appreciate that if we can see your way to it.
I mean, honestly, I think as I said at the joint meeting that we had, the items that were added to the budget are what we expected. We had these in-depth discussions about rolling things in from the ARP ESSER, and none of this was a surprise. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we got hit with I mentioned the heating fuel, but we'll also build contingency for health insurance like we did this year. So those types of things in special education, when that needle moves, that it's not going to result in a cut or a move on your side, but we'll have some contingency built in to handle what we can.
And just as an aside, we've built our budget assuming that those types of contingencies, so we still have the
Yep.
minus 200,000 for
Yep.
the salary
Yep.
turnover savings, and and the special ed at the what we know today level,
Yep.
right? And those always move around here and there, so, as we get to the end of this process, I would probably, within it being an election year, and, there'll be new people and new faces, that happen through the election process, I won't wanna write it down to say this is what our agreements were, right? So that we don't come to a year from now and having any sort of debate.
Yeah.
And I think that's good for all boards to do, that we gotta have that just documented, so.
I have a question. So you had mentioned there's no positions. I thought when we met, there was a dean of students we had. Is that been removed or is that still?
It's not a new position. What we did was repurpose the teaching position from teaching Spanish to a dean of students.
Gotcha.
Right? And it's, so there was no net add of bodies. It was just, and by the way, we also repurposed some kindergarten and first grade teachers to second and third. Is that what it was?
Well, that's just based on enrollment.
And that was on enrollment. So there's always a little bit of repurposing that goes on. The dean of students was an interestingly challenging discussion because you're reducing the population at the middle school. Mike and some are going over to the elementary, but not by enough to be able to cover it with just two administrators, right? So the thought was doing it in a less expensive way by using a teaching position and letting the two administrators do the supervisory job that they need to do, because they literally are the supervisors, where a dean of students is managing student issues and parental issues and not supervising employees. And there's a big difference between that. That's a big difference between the administrative contract and the teaching contract.
Do we worry about liability for the district because this dean of students is on the teacher level and not on the administrator
not
level?
at all.
No, okay.
No, but we have,
It's not an uncommon position, particularly in middle schools, but in Connecticut, in public schools. It's,
Gotcha.
not every district has dean of students positions. You'll hear the title dean of students, some could be in the administrator contract, some could be in the teacher contract. That could vary district to district, but it's not uncommon.
Gotcha.
and there's positions that are similar in nature, that are in the teaching contract that most people wouldn't say. They would go, oh, I never even thought about that. Like guidance counselors are all in the teacher's contract, right? And that's a similar student management type of role. So.
Mary, do you have any questions?
Just a little one. Some of the negotiated employee contracts, you mentioned paraprofessionals were in mediation recently. So you put in reasonable numbers that you might expect. Are those numbers more firmed up yet, or?
Mediation is gonna happen on the 20th of this
Okay.
month.
We had to reschedule.
Okay, because I had that
Yeah.
for February
Yeah.
27th, which
Yeah.
still was very recent, but, okay. So we don't have
So that's
exact
something
numbers.
that could change
Yeah.
prior to.
Right, and do we have any
Yes.
people being, like, at minimum wage, and that's gonna go up this year?
Lunch monitors, and that's been built into the budget.
Awesome.
One more, sorry, and we keep asking. So we obviously talked, we all know this is a COVID year, it's challenging. Where do we, I'm gonna ask you, Dr. Brewer, when do you think we'll be past that? Is this gonna be a one-year problem, is this a 5-year problem, or is this probably not?
I've got to tell you, the fallout from COVID and the things that Bob already started to talk about, and hearkening to WTNH, they did a wonderful series of mini episodes on Educating Connecticut as well. They're talking to teachers and parents and students. It is something that I don't think any of us know how long it's going to take, the ripple effect. I think there was a lot under the covers, whether it be social development concerns, family dynamic concerns, system stressors that we were all under anyway, budget issues, etc. And everything surfaced all at once, and we're dealing with this. I think it's at least a couple of years. We just had a conversation, we were talking about graduation and the field turf and the track and so forth, and I was so passionate about it when it came up at the moment, because I'm thinking our seniors were freshmen when COVID, at this time, 3 years ago, when COVID came in, and they've been dealing with this the entire time in their high school experience, and all I could think about is they're going to have a great graduation ceremony with their moms and dads. They're not fooling around with that, you know. So we are all living it, and we're all parents ourselves and have families and have all personally been affected by COVID. And so long answer to your question, but it's dynamic, it's ever changing. But I think there's going to be many, many years that we're going to look back and say, man, that was also a ripple, and who would have known?
My son told me he felt better prepared for college because of COVID, because
That's good.
I had to work full time, so I just left him to his own devices when he was doing the remote learning. So he's like, well, I had to learn how to figure it out because you weren't there to stay on top of me this morning. So he's like, I think I'm really, really good about this. And I'm like, okay. If that's what does it for you, great.
There's a reason we had him on the COVID opening plan. He was the student helper. That's right.
He had so many great suggestions. My bank account went to zero because I was delivering Chick-fil-A all the time. I was like, here you go, here's lunch, have it.
And COVID, I would also say, affected age groups very differently.
Yes, I
Right,
agree
where
with
you
that.
actually, you actually go look at the testing results. I spent a whole evening going through testing results of all sorts of districts, trying to, see, and every district took a step down. Every district in the state of Connecticut, some took more down, some took less down. But the impact to the young elementary kids was very noticeable. Across the board, because a high school kid has been, they're expecting them to be a little bit more adults and dealing with it, and whereas little kids, that structure is so important. And so now your question is exactly right. How long will it take to get back to normal? Right. And good news is we're a high performing district that has taken a step back. If you weren't as high performing district and step down and had to recover, it would be even harder, I think. So.
Can I ask not related to this budget, but maybe for next year, is there, in the curriculum side of things, is there discussion about adding enrichment side of things? We have a lot of special education needs, but on the other side of the spectrum for providing opportunities beyond, just the, I know that there's math, at least in middle school, but I know there's math counts and science and history bowl or whatever, but in school types of enrichment, is there any discussion on that?
So we had not had formal discussions on a new formal enrichment program or enrichment teacher to bring on in the district because of the circumstances we've been in. If you get a chance, I think it would really behoove the Board of Finance and anybody who might be listening to take a look at the strategic plan presentation that we talked about at last week's Board of Education meeting. The board adopted it. It's our 5-year plan. In there's discussion about our Brookfield C's, about critical thinking and collaboration, creative thinking, change making, communicating, all these great things that we want to do. But in terms of specifically talking about enrichment that hasn't been in the planning process, we've been on hold to even get to the strategic plan at this point and give us those guide rails and vision as we go forward. Now that we're going to actually begin the development process of the district implementation plan of the strategic plan, those conversations will occur, and when we bring a budget forward next year for the 24-25 year, you'll know if we're going to go in that direction or if we have to take a look at waiting another year. Because we still have another year of implementation of the positions from the ARP ESSER grant. So we can't forget that in terms of the, again, stress to the system with inflation, to our budget. So it's budgetary, but it's also what do we want for our students and trying to figure that out. There haven't been specific discussions yet. We did talk about it probably about 5 years ago during the last strategic plan, prior to 2019. And then there was, actually we carried it forward in a couple of proposals and discussions, and then it had to be taken out as we were squeezing budgets down. So I'm sure it'll surface again.
Ken, what's the biggest inflationary impact? What line item in your budget is getting hit the hardest, would you say, with inflationary pressures?
Dollar-wise would probably be the health benefits. Percentage-wise would probably be the fuel oils.
It was one of the charts. If you actually look at it from the dollar point of view, this isn't the charts that you had. This is the status quo is the inflationary one. So you can see the single biggest one was health insurance. That was at the 10%. Then salaries, it's just a big base, right? General transportation is up. Part of that is just the contract, but part of that is also the 2 buses we needed for the
Changing start times.
That's a great idea, I like that.
Then heating oil, a big percentage, and then the rest is snow.
Great, perfect, thank you.
So we, as a finance board, haven't really talked about capital so much yet, but we saw the pictures last night of the high school volley, and these other things. I know that that's projects that have already been, but do we foresee other issues? I mean, I'm looking.
Our capital request for this year, for the next year's budget was relatively modest.
It was.
But, I mean,
Yeah,
do
no,
we
I see where
anticipate
you're
there are
going.
going to, I mean, if we're having this big of a roof issue, do we anticipate other things that we didn't know about? I mean,
'Cause
I've been doing home
Well-
renovation projects and everything leads to something else.
We're engaged with a contractor, Mark Sakubo, I think is the name, for a building condition study. And in the next couple of months, they're really going to be taking a deep dive into both Wiskineer and Brookfield High School.
Did Tecton do that?
They did a study on that, October 2018.
Yeah.
So this is going to, what's that, 5 years later? So what we haven't done in the school is now 5 years older, 5 years worse, and they're gonna really focus on those 2 schools and get in there. They'll give us an updated, building condition study, and that will drive capital improvements at both Wiskineer
When
and
do you think
high
you'll
school.
have
They said by the end of May.
Right, by the end of May?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that? So we need
And
to
we
add that
wanted
into
to
the
make sure
capital
that was
committee.
done early enough to be able to help feed the
Yeah.
10-year plans.
Yep, that'll be a big
Yeah, one of the deliverables from from the study is a 10-year capital improvement plan for both schools.
I went back today, I went back and looked at that 2018 study, and is Harry still here?
He went down over
Yeah,
He
the
went
period.
down, I sent it to Harry because he was asking me about it because of what the whole discussion about what to do with center school.
Yeah.
And Tara, this has a lot of detail in it about, here's what the state of center school, Huckleberry, Wiskineer, Edit, Gorpy detail. I
Could
mean,
you shoot
600
over
pages.
those
I'll shoot those.
things?
Yeah, we can get it to you, and it's also on the Candlewood Lake New School website.
Yeah, but to me, and on the back of that, they give you a 10-year plan, but there are, and the hard challenge is it capital, is it maintenance, right?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what you're looking at on these buildings. But the center school, I'll just tell you this, the punchline on the center school is it had $12 million of projects that they felt were needed on that school.
I mean, it's kind of how we ended up with the decision framework.
Well, that was part of this
Which
We
is
were on
part
the-
of, that's why we were
committee.
doing it.
You have to
right?
assess
Yeah.
before you can make a decision, you know your stats.
And
yeah.
that wouldn't have any bringing things up to code type of numbers,
Right.
right? If you end up having to do something. So there was some, and some of that you wouldn't do, and some others you would do. I mean, it's always decision process around it, but I remember having an eye-opening moment there when that was happening. And the high school and the middle school aren't as old as those two schools, but they're not young schools either, so, but we're not gonna go build another new school in the foreseeable future because the town needs to deal with the one we just finished building, so we really wanted to use some of the ARPA funding to do this updated study so that we could really have some meaty stuff we can go on. So,
I mean, I definitely think there's some needs.
yeah, there are needs. There are needs. We're doing, you just take the capital projects we've done the last year. I mean, we're redoing all the bathrooms at the high school,
Yeah.
right? In a couple of phases. You can see those things and
And I know parking is a huge issue at the high school.
the parking lots have been a problem in all our schools.
Yeah, well, I mean, they run out of parking spaces for the seniors and juniors who are driving, and then the kids who get their licenses can't actually drive to school right now.
Then they park at the pond and it creates a
Mhm.
whole.
They're not even allowed to
Problems.
park at the pond anymore, because, I mean, yeah. And then you have to wait until the spring to park on the back route. It's just not,
Let me tell you
Not a
what
lot
it
of
was,
space.
let me tell you what
It's
it was
crazy.
like when my kids were going through the school.
Yeah.
The graduating classes were 30% larger than they are today, and it was
Yeah.
you were in a lottery to get a parking spot.
That's high grade.
yeah. I mean, I didn't have to pay for I didn't have to pay for my parking spot when I was in high school, but we had way more parking spots than we had students. I don't know how that worked out.
I mean, I was at Wisconsin here for parent-teacher conferences, and I couldn't. I
You
had-
can't ever park, I had to park in the
I'd go
grass.
in the
Yeah.
back and walk around.
Makes you get there really on time, early.
But we'll have a good, now that will tell us where there's some, oh my God moments,
Mhm.
right? When we get that stuff.
Do you guys have any questions for us?
Do you need anything else from us, information-wise?
No, I think we're good.
We've all been in pretty close communication for a while now.
Yeah.
So-
Anything you guys would like to ask? I'll sit with you on your deliberations if you have any further questions next week. Just be above on the law here in case you do have questions. So, we represent this entire team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I was
think-
just talking.
Yeah.
Now we're done.
We were gonna continue on with just general budget discussion, so,
You guys are free to go.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for
Appreciate
coming.
it. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
And thank you guys, thank you all for coming, appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
What time is the, so many emails.
4 or 5,
Yeah.
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 Yes, and we will.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We'll make a motion to take a 10-minute break. While
Everyone is out.
Yeah, everyone settles out.
get out of recess, I
Can't hurt to extra.
Can't hurt to be
motion.
extra.
I'll make a motion that we return from recess.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This is the-
Four.
we use that.
Okay, so, do we wanna talk about capital, do we want to have any further discussion?
Sorry, Diane, was
Oh.
the meeting was over, she's having issues as well.
Oh, jeez.
So let's talk, I mean, we can just do what, we can just go through the land use and the stuff that we
Yeah.
talked about. We know Parks and Rec.
So let me start with capital.
You wanna start with capital?
You think that makes sense, or
If
do
you
you
want.
want to start? with
Glenn's not
capital?
here for capital, that's all. I mean, even though he said he completely trusted you and I do, I'm fine with that.
But you guys on Capcom, so
Yes.
that's.
Yeah. Dan, are you okay with that? We go through capital a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
The delay is a little alarming, like.
So, I'm gonna put you on the spot and have you kind of lead the charge, because
It's-
you are the chair of the
Great.
capital.
Thank gosh, that.
I did warn you about that.
No, you did not.
Sorry.
And you are just doing excellent job. As soon as my computer warms up, I'll be more than happy to, because I have notes on that.
Yep.
And that should be a second. Okay. There. Don't have to connect to the internet this time, so we will be on that. Sorry, guys, bear with me. My computer's just been, because that one has the most updated one. See what you do when you put me on the spot. Done out. All right, well, I'll just do the paper until it comes up. 'Cause I have notes on all everything.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Okay, I just want to make sure I've got the right one. Yes. All right, so, you want to just go down from the top?
Yep.
All right. Starting in the general government, we talked about, let's see. Okay. So, basically, when we were in the meeting, Marcia just talked about past bond financing, so that, there's really not much you can do about that, that
Mhm.
has to be paid. IT, Microsoft Office, so Tara adjusted that, we left that in at 22, Tara adjusted it down by 15,750.
What was the justification?
I was
for
just about
that?
to ask, cause that was the,
If you
Go
don't mind.
yeah, please.
I had actually put in basically two parallel requests to you this year. One as a capital request, if I was to flat out just replace Office 2016 with the
Mhm.
newest version of Office individually licensed.
Okay,
That was the original capital request for the 22. But then in my operating budget, I had included a separate request for starting to move some of our people to Microsoft subscription services, which is basically the way forward that they're going to be moving everybody to in the next couple of years.
yep,
The thought on that one was basically if it was approved at the operating level for the subscription, we were only going to need $6,000 for perpetual licenses for the few cases where we weren't going to have a user assigned to the workstation.
and I had a note that, was this for the public computers? or
Yeah,
just
so
for the-
yeah, so basically like
Okay.
any public computers, something like this meeting laptop here where it's not assigned to a specific user, something
That's
where
what
we
this
need
is.
Office available on the computer even without having a user assigned to it.
Okay, perfect.
So you're in
Yep.
agreement with that cut, that's.
Yep.
You're in
Yeah,
agreement.
basically,
Okay.
it's actually in my request as well. I had notes saying, if we go this way, you'd be changing the
Okay.
specific lines.
Yeah.
Tara just made her adjustment based on the thought of going forward, the faster way to getting 100% basically.
Okay. Great, thanks.
And the conference room upgrades, which could not have come at a better talking point, clearly. It's for downstairs room 133 and this room, correct?
Actually, it's going to be The ones on the fiscal '23 budget were for upgrades starting downstairs.
Okay.
The one that we have in for 2024 is expanding it onto other rooms that don't have the technology first.
Oh,
So
okay.
room 135 downstairs, room 129 off of the lobby, those rooms right now have projector screens, but not even a projector in the room for technology needs.
Okay.
Is there any equipment that's come off from like the schools? Because I think they've upgraded some of their.
It's actually something I've been planning to talk with Eric about.
Okay.
A lot of stuff, especially even with center school being closed for the Candlewood
Yeah.
Lake School, they're looking at moving whatever technology they can.
Yeah.
There will be some things, like some of the smart boards that they are replacing with newer models. It is something where I'm gonna look at him and see like what hand-me-downs we can claim. But a lot of stuff they've been actually trying to reuse as much as possible or reclaim what they can.
And the grant, obviously, we talked about that last
Yes.
night, so we don't need to even really. As far as police, capital committee agreed to 2 police vehicles. We agreed to every year, and first selectman took one out, board of selectmen added it back in, so I'm still in agreement with that entire line. Not moving forward with the motorcycle this year.
So the funding for that though is coming out of excess when you're capital non-recurring?
Yes.
Okay. So that's left over from projects that came in under
For the
what
police,
we expected.
We had that fund out.
we had that
We
funded
had that
out
fund
of.
out of the,
I have
the
it.
budget capital. right?
Yeah, I had it as cash, capital on mine, but if things have changed since, I don't have the newer one, that's my fault.
So this is, the one on the screen
Oh,
is
thank you.
after Glenn
Yeah,
made some
that's-
changes. I can change them back at any time. He was making changes with respect to pockets of money. And so, yes, he moved this to come out of capital, non-recurring. That is both projects that have come in under, and
Okay.
remember during COVID, we threw some money in there to use for the debt bubble later. So those
Okay.
two
Okay.
sources are in capital non-recurring. And I can change any of them back
No.
from what he, so
No,
anything.
it's
in-
fine.
Okay.
I'm fine,
Yeah. I think that's okay.
I
just
think
wanna
it's
make
just,
sure.
right, I think you
I'm
guys just
looking
wanna
at
hear
this-
more about what we,
Yeah.
right. And I know everything on my spreadsheet has changed since last night when you brought up the vehicle reserves and funding and all
Yeah.
that numbers
Mark's
changed,
got them up there,
so
that's good.
Yeah.
it's hard for me to say.
So can I ask something? The motorcycle unit says that has the note about used
So
bikes
when I-
and stuff,
yeah,
but
so
I thought,
this-
didn't they not get the e-bikes?
No, so this is something totally different. So my notes, what I had proposed was instead of, so the officers are not trained on, in order to be a motorcycle police officer, you have to be trained. So you go to a training course, right?
Okay.
You have to supply the motorcycle to go to said training course. So the brand new Harley Davidson that they requested was $37,000 in addition to like another, I think it was like $6,000 or $7,000 in equipment that needed to be. My concern was is you don't have anybody certified, you've got to go to this course. Part of my job is this, I do this for a living,
Yeah.
so I do have officers frequently not pass the course, damaged bikes. There's just a bunch of variables that can go into it. So my suggestion was, there's used motorcycles out there, you might be able to find a used one for a fraction of the cost, go through the course, damage it, have fun with it, do whatever you need to do. Get it out on the streets, find the reason for it, find the usage, find the positives. Community policing is really what motorcycles are great for in the towns that I work with them on. Obviously, a lot of parades. Also, though, the presence on a small side road where a police car can't fit, and the presence just simply even near a intersection that is a common intersection, it just stands there. So it's a great visual. But in the budget year that we were in and what we were all talking about, I just didn't feel a brand new one was the correct course. And I had mentioned to them, I said maybe, a used unit is easier. I'm sure that a used unit, they usually go anywhere from, 12 to 17,000. And a lot of the police departments that I work with, they will trade in their older ones and get new ones. So there's an abundance of used fully with lights, sirens, all the goodies already on them. And it might work out better to try to make that approach and
I
said
appreciate,
go that way.
I appreciate your experience to share with that and
yeah.
I
Who knew?
never would have known any of that.
Who knew?
I do have on my notes that it said not urgent. So I-
And they did say
agreed.
it wasn't urgent. They were great about it, and I just said I thought that it's in the larger cities that has them, it's very easy to deal with them because there's so many police officers and so much going on. And in a smaller community, while I think it is an excellent idea, and it definitely is wonderful for community policing, I just felt like we could probably figure out a better way to do it. And I think between obviously the firehouse improvements we don't need to talk about, and I think between the ambulance and the vehicle reserves, I know Glenn was working on some, trying to figure out, because Andy repurposed the pump truck and a bunch of other stuff. In addition to, we have the fire study coming out
Yeah,
too.
we made the reserves whole in the
Mhm.
spreadsheet
Right.
that Marcia has up,
Yeah.
so.
The LifePak cardiac monitor was important, and the IT equipment. Sorry, my computer keeps trying to do that funny log on to the internet thing again. Was important. The one thing that we talked about was, it's really hard to see. Let me just move over. The one thing that we talked about was the. Let me just see. Sorry, everyone.
If you want, you can sit at the laptop itself.
Look, sorry. It's gonna look so weird, everybody watching. All right. Thank you. So it wasn't it was all in agreement with the IT equipment. There was, and we were thinking about still using ARPA for that, the thermal imaging camera.
Is
And
replacing an existing one? Because we've seen thermal imaging cameras in the past.
Yes.
Are they building up their
It was-
numbers, or
it-
is it?
No, it was
Is it?
replaced.
you got that right over there.
Or did they get a few last year before this year?
No, the LifePak cardiac monitor that was replacing.
Replacement of the first 5 units that are end of life.
Yep.
And then thermal imaging cameras, replacement of 4, which are
Okay,
reaching
replacing.
end- Yep,
Okay.
end of life.
And the bathroom remodel didn't matter. We kind of just took that off considering they were asking for we were talking about the building, so I kind of was just like, wait, and they didn't really seem to need the bathroom remodel. And the brush was just, honestly, it was number 7.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those we moved on from. Candlewood, obviously funding the vehicle reserve. So the underbody work, what happened was part of last year's capital was $12,442, and they were currently doing the work, and the work was much more extensive than they expected. So we just have to fund that. The truck is already being worked on. There's nothing, not much we can do. So that was the difference that we needed to fund from a project from last year. And again, we were thinking ARPA for that. We took out the paving because the quote that we had for the paving was very old. And considering the fact that we feel like all of the quotes that everybody has been talking about have been coming in so over budget, we just felt like the best thing to do is just to get a current quote and talk about it at, and hope that some of the inflation will kind of trend downward and we get more of a solid number for next year.
And if oil comes down,
And they were
people
okay.
come down.
They were okay.
And they were fine with that.
And they were fine with it, that's,
Yep. Okay.
this will say that.
Oh, okay, Dan, this is not, I touched something.
Marcia's controlling.
Oh, Marcia's controlling it. You know what? It was so much better when it was so much better at the Capitol when the stuff was not televised. Could just be me. Dan's life is so much better not on television. All right, Public Works,
Fire marshal?
oh, sorry, Fire Marshal. So, he is in need of a vehicle and he has no vehicle. The one that he had is expired, in the nicest way to say it.
They have a vehicle.
They do have a
Any
vehicle?
other vehicle. They have
They-
an old vehicle,
But the other one caught on fire.
yes.
Yeah, so, And he was saying the other one wasn't working very well, so.
But we have 2 police cars coming on board. Does that mean we have 2 old police cars that can get repurposed, which is what we've often done in the past?
We had a canine, an old canine that was coming up when we asked, and it was not really a good hand-me-down.
Okay,
It's pretty on the end of its life as well.
okay.
We even talked about if there was a possibility of them, you know,
But are they adding, so police are getting 2 new vehicles.
Right.
Is that adding to their fleet or
well,
replacing?
the fire. I mean, I looked at the fire marshal as no, they're. Let me see, hold on.
They're
They're replacing vehicle replacement 1 and vehicle replacement 2.
So what's happening with those 2 vehicles?
I believe one of them they're cycling through to a SRO.
SRO, and the other one was.
Yeah, this was
K9,
this was
yes.
the one meeting
Oh.
that I was out
Yeah,
and
so
I couldn't
Okay.
hear,
one-
so I'm
one
gonna
was
let
a-
you guys
One was a
answer these.
canine unit that nobody wants to smell the dog.
Right.
And the other one was repurposed. I think it's for the SRO in Huckleberry. I could be wrong. But the
Okay.
one that's going to.
This
He's one of the SROs.
Yeah. So, and then the fire marshal vehicle is just, honestly, the other one that he has doesn't work. And it had, I guess,
They caught on fire.
yeah.
No problem.
And I think he said it broke down at one of somewhere he was going.
Hopefully.
It's not good when the
Caught on fire.
fire marshal vehicle caught on fire.
So, well, I guess then, is there any insurance money that comes to help offset that cost? Right, I mean, when my car caught on fire when I was in college,
Marcia, that might be a great, Marcia, do you know the answer to that?
I believe it caught on fire, but they're still using it. It wasn't totaled.
Okay.
And I assume at that probably value, we probably only have liability insurance.
When we
on
did,
that.
in the capital committee, when we did ask a lot about town vehicles, there was that auction site that Ralph was talking about, but
Yeah.
it was shocking to me that it went for like pennies on the dollar. He was like, we can put this dump truck in and it's like you might get $750 for it. And I was so shocked that these huge equipment or
Those
these
scrap metals alone.
vehicles
Yeah.
that cost us so much money go for so little in the end. Because I had asked about chippers and stuff like that. He's like, there really is just no money in reselling our vehicles.
At least keep the tires or something to
Yeah,
swap out with our other trucks.
I know. So I did feel that the vehicle replacement for the fire marshal was appropriate. So the paving, we kind of just glossed over because it was the paving that happens every year.
Mhm.
Can I ask Tara a question?
Yeah.
Tara, the Board of Selectmen cut 100,000. Was that in discussion with Ralph, or is that, I mean, I know yesterday it seemed like he does have money in his reserve. Was that like an agreed upon cut, or you guys just thought it made sense to cut?
That happened at our final deliberation, and I was not in favor of that. It came from the other 2 selectmen.
Gotcha.
I felt like it was it was just a number.
I brought it up
That's what it
again
seemed to be like.
when Ralph was here, just to make sure we were tracking. We were downstairs that night, whenever, so, but nothing's been said. I've talked to
Yeah.
Ralph.
Yeah,
Quite-
maybe we need to double check with him, I mean,
Yeah.
'cause when he.
I didn't get a clear answer from him either about whether or not he was okay with it being reduced by 100, because then when he said he was okay with the micro paving and doing really great with that, but then he said in future maybe I could downgrade, but I don't want to downgrade now. So I went back and forth on that. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'll check again with
But-
him.
Yeah,
Great.
I mean, and he mentioned like having this reserve, but I think what it was that the money that was sitting there to be used in the spring, but it sounded like he was sitting on a pile of money.
It
Yeah.
did, and I don't
Exactly.
think
I don't
that.
think
Yeah,
that's what you
I don't
meant.
think that's what he
Yeah.
meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what it sounded
Correct.
like. Dan was ready to jump on that one.
I saw Dan's face. I was like,
I can tell you he's not sitting on a pile of money.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Current
Marcia.
year money. But we go through it first in, first out, and I believe all he is working on now is current year money.
Okay. So in terms of vehicles, we approved one of the 6-wheel dump, the oldest one, which was a 1999. And as a board, we just decided that, as a committee, I should say, we just decided that we couldn't do 2. So we gave 1. There's 99 in 2003, and I would like to say depending on, you know, obviously what happens in the coming years. I really do think that Ralph could be, Public Works could be a great candidate for a reserve. These trucks are expensive, and I remember last year and the year before hearing these stories about how old these trucks were and how, you know, the floors were rotted out.
The Vector truck was last year.
Yeah, and I was like, I felt like, and they're not cheap trucks, so I really feel as though going forward, we would be better probably serviced having a reserve for them every year and then working up to that and getting on a replacement schedule and say, okay, so the useful life of these is 20 years. That's not a lot to put aside. And, you know, maybe as like Ryan, we were talking about, you start that, so you purchase it, and the second, they were saying that the one that they were getting last year was just coming in, we start that reserve for that one
Yeah,
going forward.
yeah, no, I think that's a perfect place to put the reserve.
Yeah, and we heard from Public Works how they have such an aging fleet, and I think it's just a lot easier for people to say, yes, because we have money put aside,
Yeah.
Right.
but we won't have an aging fleet in
Yeah.
the future.
Th-
right?
And it moves us in
Exactly.
the direction that we need to go in. I mean, this is
I agree.
the whole conversation from
We
Tuesday.
talked about cash versus, you know, like the best way, and Dan, I'm paraphrasing it because you always say it better than I say it, but you know, you want it now,
Yep.
you see it in your taxes, you want it later, you know, you see it in debt,
Or you don't need it at all.
or you don't need it at all. So I think it's one of those things where if we're gonna be smart about stuff and we wanna pay for cash
Mhm.
going forward, to be responsible, putting money aside every year for these
Yep.
things that do have useful life is the way to go. And then we don't find ourselves having to pick and choose. We just know, okay, you're up. And I think Ricky was working on a vehicle,
Yeah.
Ricky was working on a vehicle replacement Excel spreadsheet, which he said he was going to do in the downtime. So that'll be part of when the capital committee reconvenes after the budget. The $15,000 for rebuilding the excavator undercarriage was kind of a no-brainer to me, because it was just not a huge dollar item. We were trying to, I remember when we were doing it, we were also targeting a number and playing back and forth, and therefore it kind of wound up where, as a capital committee, we took away the pickup trucks. I talked to them about the chipper. The chipper, they felt that their other chipper is fine. They could use another chipper just based on the fact that we've had so many down trees and so many
Yeah.
storms, but they also didn't seem to be upset when we said, you know, can it wait? They do have a chipper. It is working. It is just on the old side. They
Okay.
talked about possibly if they got this chipper, they would use the other chipper as a backup. When I discussed that, what happens if you don't use it? And I said, well, you know, like everything, if it doesn't get used,
Yeah.
it probably doesn't work very well. So I felt like, okay, well, this chipper's working, and it was $80,000. And then that,
Number six.
and it was number 6. And then that good old mini excavator, just poor thing.
Someday
know.
somebody will gift them.
Someday somebody's gonna get them a mini excavator. I feel it. If I win the lotto, that'll be the thing. So, and then I see that Tara, you threw that one of the pickups back in,
Yes.
and the Board of Selectmen was fine with that. Okay. And it looks like they're paying it a year-end salt, so that his overage from salt. So I'm actually okay with that. At that point, when we met with Ralph, we didn't know if there was gonna be salt.
He did mention, he said, at the end of March, I'll know
Yeah.
where I am, and I might be able to afford one of these, so this makes sense.
Yeah, it makes
And
total
that year-end
sense.
salt is Glenn. That's not,
Oh,
right?
well,
No.
I
Oh,
don't,
that's not, that one is,
That was,
Okay.
that was from the board of selectmen, right?
oh.
I remember
Or
he
actually,
did mention it, at the meeting though, depending
that
on his
is-
salt budget, he was,
Right.
so
But I
ma-
don't know if those
I don't know if those
exact
are
numbers will
Glenn
be in-
notes or,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm okay with that with the salt, because that does make sense with what
Yeah.
Ralph, it goes in line with what he was saying, and, okay.
That was not Glenn Notes.
Okay.
That was Ralph being creative to try and get his truck.
Okay.
Well, I'm all about creativity. All right.
We actually, as a board of selectmen, played around with the second truck too, because you can see under it says year-end salt.
Year-end
So
salt,
we
yep.
think we had it in there, but then when
Mhm.
we had to go back and scramble to get money out for other
Yeah,
things,
other
we
things,
took
yeah.
that out.
Makes sense.
So I kind of only could wish Ricky was here about the doorknobs. But we just decided that we had a big discussion about doorknobs. But yeah, in the scheme of things, this was, the buildings were, it was a big discussion. And if I kind of skip like the top few real quick, the police roof replacement is obvious. It's not a must, and they don't absolutely need it. And then obviously going in with what we were talking about, the potential of needing a new facility anyway, that got taken out.
Can you do me a favor too, on that roof replacement,
Mhm.
can you just highlight, it right now it says the source of funding is bonding, which is the $75,000
Yeah.
expense. Can you just highlight that so we make sure that
We
that's-
can change that to
Yeah, I think
other.
that needs to be other.
Line 86, Marcia.
Yeah, line 86. There you go.
Thank you.
The doorknobs, so the doorknobs were, I'm kind of looped. Do you remember, if I remember what we were talking about, that was Ralph, and the doorknobs weren't really
They're not ADA.
They're-
They're not ADA.
they are not
compliant.
ADA compliant.
We don't need to do them because it's not a use change like center school we're talking
Correct.
about. So we just thought at this point, especially the police department, the town hall, we have a lot more other priorities at this
Right.
point, and it didn't seem like.
And it wasn't like it wasn't a code issue, it wasn't anything like
And they do already have some doorknob money in the ARPA, the original allocation.
Okay.
that. And again, the facility manager's vehicle was just another vehicle that we took out due to the fact that we were putting in the fire marshal's vehicle. It came down to kind of just picking and choosing $40,000 vehicles. They seem to all be in the $40,000 range.
I remember when we, I think last year we talked about like how many vehicles we have on the books for the town. Was that part of like the capital,
That was what Ricky was working on, the
he was
vehicle
doing
list.
just the vehicles.
The whole
Okay.
inventory.
So he's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
do a
yeah.
whole inventory of all the vehicles, and then we were gonna, the idea that Ricky had, which I thought was a brilliant idea, was to put them all into useful life.
Mhm.
And then as they came up, we would be able to throw them into capital and go, okay, you're up.
Yeah.
And then the department could say, we actually don't need it.
Yeah.
And then we could go to the next department, or several departments, however
Yeah.
it works. It's just like the way we look, we know we need new police cars, that's kind of a given. But, like, the fire marshal, the health department, if we need another town vehicle, it would be good to know when these are cycling through, and then we can just be better prepared for them. And Ricky was saying, to his credit, it was a small amount that we probably have to put into reserves for a couple of those vehicles
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah.
And then he said, if you don't need it, put it aside or put it to something, hey, by the time we're done, maybe it gets a chip.
Yep.
Who
Yeah.
knows? The library community room roof replace ceiling tiles we did because they really do need to be done. Those ceiling tiles are looking, I have not been there personally, but reports were, they just really need to be replaced.
And that building will get repurposed at
In
some point,
summer,
but we
yes.
know as our discussion,
Yes.
it will still be a library for.
But even if they did move to center school moving forward, I think it's 2030. So
We still
need to
several more
maintain
Yeah,
it,
exactly. And the same kind of thing went with the old town hall and the town garage, just the painting and the
Yep.
exterior and the wood repairs,
That's
it
maintenance, that needs
it
to
was
be done.
maintenance and it needs to be done. Why don't we talk about so the generator, we took out actually the senior center, so yeah, there is the senior center, there we go, the generator. So that, originally I had taken out because, it went to the Board of Selectmen to be used of this year's funds. Then it went to us, but unfortunately we were missing Tara and someone else from the meeting, so we tabled it, and we tabled it to the last meeting, which now we just moved it to discuss tonight.
And because the Board of Selectmen cut it, I don't know how you want to rescind
Right.
your motion from.
Well,
it
we
being
can add it
tabled.
back in, I think Glenn's thought was we can add it into the capital, because we can make it part of this coming budget season, the new budget.
Yeah.
Which was why we left it on here, so if for some reason it didn't pass you guys, and it never even made it to us, it was a marker and it was a placeholder for us to be able to talk about and say, do we want to add this in? to capital for 23-24. So, as I said before Ryan was in here, I did feel that Jason did a wonderful job presenting and the reason for it. So if you feel like you would like him to come and talk when we have a full board about the needs for it, I'm sure he would be happy to do that. Because I know Glenn is in here, he had questions about it. And you didn't get to hear the entire presentation.
It wasn't on video, so I
You
couldn't
know,
go back and.
It was that the senior center is more, it has volunteers versus the schools needing to, you know, they are also obviously shelters, in addition to the fact that it was centrally located. The town hall doesn't need a generator. We don't need the town hall operating with lights on. It does give us a, you know, a kind of a command center. They used to share it with the police, but there is rules that they can't be down in certain areas of the police department. There's things going on.
People cannot be sheltering in the lobby when there's a disaster or storm, or they have
Yeah.
pets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Tira, do you know if the library and the seniors, I mean, I obviously know they're two different buildings, but would they operate in similar fashion in terms of an emergency? So like, is that like something where we could pick one of those and those would facilitate a small shelter?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think the downstairs of the library has a lot of what the senior center has, which is a kitchenette space and you can divide the large open room into 2 rooms if you need to segregate people, or so in that regard there's really not much difference. And actually the ADA, the new ADA bathrooms in the downstairs level, but I don't think it'd be a good idea to bring people up for sheltering in the actual library area.
I guess my question was, there's 2 requests, right? So if we say, if as a board we decide senior center generator makes sense, does that kind of null and void the library?
Yes. Yes.
So the
The
library
senior
did not
center-
want the generator.
Okay,
They came to us
right.
that night and they said, don't worry about the generator. Additionally, because I think we're still kind of going back and forth between where the library really goes. You know, center's the one that was,
Well, that was part of it, but it was also, we didn't know we were gonna pay for it out of this year's
Yeah.
capital non-recurring, or are we gonna build it into the budget, or are you guys gonna approve it at all? But the whole concept of getting the generator to the senior center is for emergency management team operations, right? And that encompasses a lot of things. If, God forbid, there's ever another mega burst or the macro burst, whatever you had come through in 2018, they cannot operate out of the fire department. They cannot operate out of the police department. From what I understand, to get the high school up and going as a shelter is a pretty big undertaking. Like, you're firing up this generator, if they lose power, you've got to bring the staff, you have to have the food service, you've got the union issues to kind of work around depending on what needs you have there, and only like a few people used it. So the theory is, you know, even in a major storm, you know, we wouldn't really necessarily have to accommodate that many people. And if it becomes a regional thing, the Red Cross will fire up their shelter in Bethel anyway. And we've got the new school coming online. I don't know what the rules are going to be for use of that building at this juncture, but you know, in the past we had, you know, the east side of town and the west side of town. But this will bring that emergency management team to a consolidated space and be able to provide the shelter at the same time.
It's a smaller version shelter
Yeah.
that's not,
And we
doesn't
have-
rise to the level of needing a school.
yeah,
Right.
and the schools are not, this doesn't negate a shelter at the school. This was just an additional where, you know, obviously they could run town operation, a certain amount of town operations out of it. Like I said, it has a kitchenette. And, you know, what Jason did bring up, which was a good point, is that is, the senior center is where those people, they go to, they're familiar, you know, a lot of seniors go there, and he said, you know, he said, I think that would be, it's just a familiarity. So for a good vast amount of people versus going to an elementary school or the high school, it is centrally located and it's easier. It was just one of the easier points. In addition to the fact, again, that there's just areas you can't be in the police station, you can't be in the fire department's way. They're gonna be busy running their own command center, so for us to be able to just have one place where anyone could go.
Can we highlight that one?
Mm-hmm. And come back to it when we
Back
have
to
a
it
full
again.
board,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
Like, apparently this has been an ongoing issue for many, many years. Do you put one in between the senior center and this building and fire them both up at the same time? That generator is insanely expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just don't see this building as being useful at all.
And honestly, I mean,
I agree.
people talk, I know that there was talk after the macro burst about having a generator here so people could work, but there wasn't internet access
Right.
anyway. So there
Nobody
was
was
a lot of things
working.
that you really couldn't
Yeah.
have
And the
done.
town functioned during COVID without a problem, so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind of-
from home, everybody functioned.
Exactly.
Marcia, can you highlight the
The
senior
senior
center
center.
one so we can come back to it and talk about it?
And that 80,000
Thank you.
is the cost of the generator. The last estimate a couple months ago now was $64,000. We built in a buffer for some soft costs because
Mhm.
there's additional work with
A pad.
Electrical
some
panel,
cement
switch,
work
and
and some
the
trenching and
Yeah.
electrical. That we may or may not be able to do some of that in-house, so.
Obviously the library elevator.
They took that out.
Yep, they took that out themselves.
That elevator's an interesting one to me. I always keep coming back to that elevator because those stairs are horrendous.
They
And
really
are.
if the library is going to stay there for X number of years, I just can't get past those stairs.
Mhm.
It's
And
not-
all the programs are downstairs, but all the prep for the programs upstairs.
And if
So we
we
have the
have-
librarians trucking everything up and down the stairs and
Yeah,
armfuls
we-
of stuff.
I know it down.
There you go.
That's so great.
And we do have the new ADA ramp outside, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
But it's still
Or
outside.
you
You're
can
still
still
leaving
Yeah.
and going around.
Or you think of like moms with one kid on the hip and a toddler in their hand on those stairs.
I know,
My goodness.
Well, and so this all brings up a good point because like Ryan said, even if we're talking library community center, right, that's still 2030, let's just say.
I mean,
right?
that's what, I think even that's what they're.
That's what they were, I think they
that's
were
even what
projecting.
asked for. It was 2029, I think.
2029.
Is that-
Or 2028, I thought.
2030 would be
20
when it would open.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's still-
so we have still 7 years of the same thing that Tara just raised the concern about is those stairs.
And the building will be used for something.
Right.
And the building is gonna be used for something after, so,
Did this get as an ARPA request?
no,
I
they
mean-
you know what the thing was, is when the library came, they were very, very, very focused on
They're-
the pre-referendum
Yeah.
services. So they were basically, I mean, the way I took it was, is well, we don't need this, but we really want this.
Mhm.
So they were very focused on that 150, and I felt like they were more than willing to give up. So I think that's just kind of, we were going down the line, we're like, okay, you don't need the library, you don't need the elevator, okay, you don't need the generator, cool, it's off, it's good. And then, you know, we talk about the big 150. Which I also want to highlight because I feel like, you know, Glenn, that's just got to be part of like when Glenn and Dan are here. But I would be amenable to discussing the elevator in more detail simply because we all brought up really good points about that. If we have 7 years of using this building and those stairs are a problem, and future use of the building regardless of what it is, and those stairs are going to be a problem for future use. And well, the only other issue too is I don't believe that, I feel like that 30 grand has just been 30 grand
I
for
thought there
That's
was
for
a
planning and
price.
design.
planning and design.
Yeah, that's not even.
That's so, and they don't have it, I don't have
Oh,
anything.
it's in buildings, not library.
Oh, yep. So now as I'm talking, my concern would be that that's not 30 grand.
I remember last year there was the full price of the elevator in the budget, and I don't think that was the first time it was in the budget.
No, it's been in the budget, I think, every year since
Even
I've been
that
on.
price now is,
Let's see,
So
no,
planning and design only.
yeah,
30,000.
new elevators have this request is for planning and design only, so.
I mean, is it
I guess you have to plan and design before you.
You do, but are we gonna spend $30,000 to plan and design for something that's gonna cost us 150? No, and I don't know what the cost of elevators are, let me make that clear, I have no idea.
And it's been in the 10-year list, but it has not, this is the first year it's been in the actual requests for the current year.
much is in town.
And they said, yes, it could wait. But
They
like you
did
said,
say-
if we were concerned, we could still bring
They
it
said,
back.
yeah, can this wait for another year? Was this included in our 10-year plan? It has been included in the past.
And actually, it was the Department of Public Works request, and not even a library.
Well, Ralph, because it's buildings,
Buildings.
I think he throws that in, kind of like the roof. He said, I just put the roof in because it's a building and I put the roof in. So it is not required for health and safety, and it is not required under law and regulations, and they are saying it's absolutely not critical. All those boxes are checked now. And then in addition to that, it will not improve productivity or reduce cost, but it will make better use of assets. And will funding this now help to avoid a more costly expenditure? No. So,
The library's on your calendar for next week.
it is, we can absolutely highlight this in red and just discuss it further when they're here too. Along with the 152. Perfect.
The EV stuff is out.
Yeah, I felt like as a team, there wasn't enough knowledge about information about it.
For
Bob,
now.
For now. You know, Bob brought up that we know down the road we have the possibility of needing electric school buses or something. Everybody was talking about that. And
I love turning this fleet back here into an EV fleet, but I think that's a bridge too far for a little bit.
I
yeah.
have an electric lawnmower, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
We do too.
I have an electric snow shovel, and it's like the greatest thing that I've ever had in my entire life. But it's also not a car. Yeah, you press the handle and it just goes. It's like a little tiny snowblower. So I think that it was a complete unanimous, including Greg was fine. He wasn't pushing it. It did not seem like there was any worry in it not going through.
When you get around to wanting more information on that, Kurt Timmerman, who's on
Yeah.
zoning, is very knowledgeable in this area.
Okay, cool. Health department vehicle. They have one. You said that.
They have one, but if we get the other full-time sanitarian, but I never use BK1, so that's why I chopped it, because there's other,
There were other vehicles to
I
use.
think I've used it
I
twice in
think
a year.
Steve was the same way. He
Yeah.
used his own car.
Yeah.
His
So,
company.
It also comes to a point where we talk about expensing miles in their people's own cars.
Yeah.
And is it cheaper than actually having vehicles for every employee?
Well, now that we've fixed the policy for travel to conferences, there was a distance issue and the policy needed updating, so now that's done. So it will be cheaper, but before it was insanely expensive because the policy was written incorrectly. But, you know, the point of having our vehicles is for them to utilize town vehicles and not their own personal, you know, so.
Right.
But I
But we
never
also don't wanna have a
expensed
whole
trip.
bunch of vehicles that we're paying insurance on and maintenance
Right.
that are actually.
that are sitting
being
there
used.
and having dead batteries and going dead because they're not being used. Is in terms of like using BK1 because you don't use it. I think for a health department vehicle, if we are going to be going out and inspecting things, it should be in a like BK1. It should be in a town vehicle. You're
Yeah,
going
I
out,
agree.
Yeah.
you're going to businesses. You need to be doing that. So I think for now, I'm in agreement with that. In agreement with that we take it out. We still have to hire. You know, if that passes with another full-time sanitarian, we would still need that body to drive the car anyway.
Mhm.
So it's premature. But I do believe that if you're going out and inspecting businesses and things, you need to be in a town vehicle, not your own vehicle. So, moving right along. There we go. All right, so I think if in my personal feeling, the library for the 150 just needs to be talked about when they come here and also further deliberations later on. Okay. So, the compact wheel loader with bucket. Chris talked about that, and he said if we did the compact wheel loader with bucket, he did not need I believe number 3 goes away, the 70,000, because he did not need that if we went with number 1.
We've also paid $30,000 over the last 2 years in rental for that.
Correct.
Because that's going to be, remember, if you guys remember, when I was first on the board, they needed that because of the fence.
Yep.
But then they realized with the parking lot situation, they need it full time, so now it makes sense just to buy for
Correct.
standalone. So that's.
Is that one of the ones that could come out of the school budget?
We had a question as to whether or not, if there was leftover money, it could come out of the school budget, and I don't. Marcia, did you send an email and hear back from that?
I did send an email, they were gonna check, but I haven't heard anything back. I put a follow-up to check with them
There was a
on
question about that,
what
yeah.
they said.
We had asked originally for the rental, could we put it in the school
Right,
budget? They said
right.
no, but this way makes sense, which is left over at the end of the
We have a rent-to-own program, like
I think somebody asked that. That's so funny. So that's why we got rid of number 3.
Yep.
And again, you know, the utility vehicle with the plow. I feel like we felt like if we did the compact, even though they were not the same, they also felt like it wasn't. I didn't get any pushback from Chris about not taking number 2. And I think because we were funding the 121 number 1, we had to make some tougher.
How much
Cut.
of the, I thought we contracted out for plowing, how much of the parks
That-
plowing do we actually?
We have 3 lots that get plowed. The fire department, this parking lot, and the PD.
Okay.
And that price almost doubled this winter.
That's what I remember.
But that's
I think they've only
outsourced,
plowed
right? That's
twice.
not us doing it.
Right.
Why do we need a truck plow?
For the schools.
For the schools. So
Oh,
with
that's
the
those
new,
schools.
yeah, this was strictly for the schools, and I remember the parking lot, Chris was explaining something about the new CLES, the parking lot. Bob, I will ask you to help me out here, because I know you had explained it
Because of the
too.
islands and stuff.
There's islands and there's
There's
special,
islands, that's the
it'll
issue.
just get
You
damaged.
just can't push it
Right.
into the
Got it.
woods. You have to lift it and
Thank
move
you.
it.
Or else if you do, you won't have islands.
Right, or we won't have islands anymore. We'll just
Yeah.
repurpose
Or
them
not
too.
really, okay.
Right over to another parking lot. And I have personally not the town hall bandstand roof. Everyone seemed to say that had been there, it wasn't really all that horrible and could wait another year. I don't personally know, so I allowed. It seemed that the everyone who was talking said it seemed like it wasn't that bad. Ricky said it wasn't that bad. There was agreement on that. So we did, however, make a swap for the comfort stations, which are very much in need, badly.
Yeah, anybody's been to a concert in the park.
So we decided that that would be a better,
And they said they would bring it up to standards like Cadigan is, so has anybody been in the Cadigan? That
Oh,
was
yeah,
much nicer. Yes. So that was.
They can do that for 29,000?
I asked that question too.
Because I'm doing a master bath right now.
There will be no marble tile.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
That's
Library.
crazy.
Parks and Rec.
Is that,
Comfort station.
I have a,
I saw something. The only thing my notes indicated, which I remember even though I'm not by my computer, was that he said that they were gonna improve the aesthetics and functionality inside the building.
okay.
He felt like 29 was a safe number. I did say there were no quotes attached. There was a lot that came from parks that were no quotes attached.
Yeah, that's.
And that was like that little bit of a gray area. Chris said he would welcome, he would go and get more quotes. We had kicked,
Let me check with
yeah,
Laura.
we had kicked a lot off the budget, the capital budget, because there were no quotes. So that's the reason why, and some of the quotes that we had were old, so I just kicked them off and said,
Yeah.
come back, and we knew we had a new director, and
Yeah.
it was one of those things where they could come back and ask for it another time.
This one, maybe, it might be good to just shore it up and just make sure
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's enough.
I agree.
Hate to-
Marcia, can you highlight that one in red?
It may help that the structure itself is in place and they don't have
Yeah.
to do all that, but yeah, 29 seems a little low.
I unknowingly apparently picked out an $800 toilet. Because there are
Yeah.
no price tags on it.
Yeah.
And then I got the paperwork at home, I was like, we are not buying an $800 toilet.
Yeah. I did that. Oh, late, couldn't cancel. So the Parks Department talked about a propane building generator, and really what Chris was saying was the only reason to have a generator there was just to not allow the pipes to freeze. But he did seem to say, if I remember correctly, the $2,000 that we kept in there, he could work with that on, renting it or a smaller one, just to literally keep.
It's a replacement for the.
Yeah, it's a replacement for the one he's got. He's got a very small one, and it was
Is
fine.
this the building at the high school? Is that the?
No, it's I don't know where, it's a small little building where I think they,
Going across from the historical society.
No, that's where their office is, but that would happen.
It's along that back drive in the
At the high school,
Yeah.
okay.
he said it made it sound like it wasn't that, he just didn't want the pipes freezing. So he
Yes.
said, really, it's fine as long as I,
In their generator they're using now is like the smaller one.
and it's
Oh,
fine.
okay.
Yeah.
The
One of
that he
the
wanted was
things that
automatic.
Laura and I talked about was that building, and maybe in the capital plan, the model, they're deserving of a new Parks garage.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think it's surprising that it's system. Oh, okay.
So, and the only issue that with the library patio replacement, it wasn't great last year. We agreed it wasn't better. It wasn't getting any better. Little concern about the $20,000, the 22.5 quote, because it was from, if I remember correctly, it's 22.318, and it was from 2020. So my concern is it was an old quote, but then the other discussion is the possibility of being able to maybe repair it for that. So it's another thing that we left in because we know it needs to be done, but would like to get more quotes. And that was something that we were talking about. And again, Chris was such a great sport coming out and going over everything with us. So I guess, Tara, we could ask Laura again if she maybe wants to get a new
Yeah.
quote for that.
Yeah.
We were hoping that we could repair it for 20 in the areas that were not great versus replace it, because the quote we had here is from 2020, and that was my concern because it's not 3 years but 2.5 years and everything's so much more expensive. So if we could mark that one red too, Marcia, that would be amazing.
Is this the lower patio off by the community room, or is
Other
this
side.
other side? Okay. I
Yeah. So going on to parks and park maintenance. All right, so the Cadigan tennis baseball, apparently they need to be done every certain amount of years. And when we did, it's every 5 to 10 years. It has the useful life as 5, but we were only, it actually says that the turf was, in order to keep the warranty, it has to be resurfaced every 5 to 10 years, and we did it in 2016. So we weren't at the 10-year point, so we felt like instead of doing 68, we did 23. We divided it kind of in thirds, figuring we could fund 23 a year for the next 3 years and then pay for the resurfacing at the 10-year to just keep that warranty valid, but not do it right now. That was the methodology behind the third.
Do we want to bump that up so we're not running into getting bumped up? Like, do it 2 years down the line so we're a little bit ahead and not on the high end of 10 years? Because if something happens and I don't want us to nullify the warranty
I don't
because
disagree with that.
a contractor can't fit us into their schedule.
The good news was this quote was from November.
Right.
So at least I'm
just worried,
yeah.
like, the cost may be okay, but if you are pushing it out to do that repair and you can't get the contractor in until
That's a
after
good
the
point.
10 years,
Yeah.
if that nullifies the warranty, the guarantee, that's not good.
No, I'm not in disagreement with that.
So this is saying that $68,000 will cover resurfacing for the tennis courts, the basketball courts, and then the little basketball court on the beach side? That doesn't seem like a lot
Recoat
of money.
tennis courts. Recoat Vivo Court and the half court across the street. The half court across the street's pretty tiny.
It is, but in how many years? 3 more years?
Yeah, 2016,
Is
so
that gonna be
2026.
enough by then?
Budget estimate, oh, and then there's lighting.
should try
Yeah.
and get more solid estimates. Although this was dated.
It was the 22nd November of 2022. That was one of the reasons why I think we felt better about. I mean, I'm fine having it. I mean, we can definitely talk about having it, Eileen,
Mhm.
during deliberation. That's not a problem at all. We just felt like we didn't need to fund the full 68 right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking we might want to do a shorter time frame so we're
Mhm.
not running up against that.
Mm-hmm.
that
Yep.
date.
I agree. Okay. The bleachers replacement. So many of the small bleacher systems around town are in disrepair. We plan to systematically replace the bleachers in priority order based on sites with safety concerns. So they put in 30,000, and this is not to replace all of them, it's just to replace a section. Whichever section was deemed in most need of replacement, that would get us a chunk of it. Not all of it, a chunk of it. So we left that in. Okay. Now, this is where I think line 3 deserves more of a discussion. So Chris was gonna go look at the shed. We talked, because there's, when you go into Williams Park, there's the small shed, and then there was the big shed. They were gonna, I think, demolish it themselves. I don't think they needed to hire anybody to do it. It was simple, it was easy. We were just gonna get rid of that. He said that the equipment that is stored in there is nothing that is anything to write home about. They'll probably just try to sell it. And it can be repurposed elsewhere throughout the town, so there was no reason to put up another structure in its place. And we need to get a little bit, I think we talked about questioning what form of driveway we were putting on. I thought it was gravel, and I was like, no, there was pavement, and I was like, oh. So
Yeah.
that's a problem, because I was like, oh, it's a little gravel driveway.
Yeah. no.
So is the $40,000, gonna do the deed with repaving that correctly, or was it going to be a different level of pave? So I think he was just getting,
$40,000.
it seemed too cheap to me to repave that whole area, so Chris was getting a little bit more in depth, but I left the 40 in because we agreed that that shed has to come down, and it's not, it's like it's hanging on a thread.
Yeah.
Really should
I
needs
wonder
to
if
be
we could
demolished.
take a hybrid approach and have, the tennis court side parking spaces is paved along the driveway, and then that bit up where the sheds are, just
Yes.
leave that gravel? I mean, cause all the parking up at Gursky is grass and gravel.
It's grass and gravel, yeah.
So-
Originally, that's why I thought, okay, we're just gonna put gravel down, and
Yeah.
it's like, just repurpose,
Yeah.
just put more gravel on top, because that's honestly what I thought we were driving on.
Yeah.
In my minimal experience in Williams
Because the
Park.
driveway's that bad.
Correct,
Yeah.
which everyone
It makes
corrects me,
you
and I
drive
said,
slow
oh,
now.
oh,
It makes
Oh.
you drive slow. and that's
right, it does. So, but the shed definitely has to come down, and I am all about, if we can find, like you were saying, Eileen, a hybrid approach, we can go out and get quotes and say, okay, can we do this gravel up top and get that taken care of, and then pave another,
Yeah.
But we should definitely try, there are some areas of that that definitely need to be smoothed out regardless. It needs some sort of attention.
Is gravel difficult for them if they plow it? Do they plow Williamsburg?
It will be a problem with plowing, for sure, 100%. So, and I know that, well, on colder years, we did have an ice rink there, so it would need to be plowed
We
for
have-
people
we
to
have
get there.
Gravel Cadigan, we have gravel at
Yeah.
Gursky, and those all plows.
Yeah. We might just have to break up the whole.
Yep. Well, it's a discussion. And obviously, we took out design and construction for 2 pickleball courts. We did not feel that that was appropriate at this time.
There are pickleball courts at Cadigan, that's the other reason we.
Yeah, they wanted more pickleball
It's the
courts
tennis
at Williams
courts
Park.
that they
That they
They lined them.
And they wanted pickleball courts near the existing tennis courts at Williams Park, and we just felt like it was a lot.
I can't tell you.
And then I do apologize. I think Ryan, you spoke to this better about the lighting improvement in the parking lot. You thought you're there.
Yes, so I'm there a lot.
Yes.
The parking lot, it's dark. My daughter plays soccer there. when it's in the fall, you can't see in that parking lot. So this 20,000 was to actually put lights on the back half of the lights to actually light up the parking lot. But I think we took these out because we had talked about potential grants. I
Yeah.
think.
Energy grants and
Energy
switching
grants.
over the lights and
Yes,
getting better, and
because
we were
they're
looking into
Old school
that.
lights, so that's why we thought we were trying to go down that way to kind of fix that.
And I think that was one of the things that we had just thrown out at Chris, and it might be something that Laura, he probably just needs to go over with Laura. She hasn't had a whole bunch of time to really be hit with all these questions. So that was kind of all we were talking about the lane with. Is there a possible energy grant that we could be more efficient at that field? The walking trail surface, we had talked about changing this for following years, that this should just be a part of the operating budget for Parks and Rec. Every year they need the walking trail surface redone, so we should just, as Ricky was talking, but you should just put $5,000 into your operating budget every year. Know it has to be done. Make it a part of your yearly to-do list. So we put the 5,000 in. I think. Oh no, and then you guys added it back in. But we had originally said we were just going to do 5,000, do the little bit of gravel, fix the areas that need to go for it, and then going forward they need to keep. That was the capital committee's suggestion. Going forward, they would just keep it a part of their budget. And then you added it back in.
Yeah, reason being, $5,000, what's that gonna get you?
I think we were filling in the areas, again, I am not a Cadigan, I do not go to Cadigan at all.
This has come up
Rick, is
quite
it-
a bit,
has it?
especially
Okay.
through
It gets
COVID, and
used a
people
lot.
use that path around the perimeter. It's become, it's a place, it's a destination for exercise and to be outside, especially while kids are at the sporting events and parents, utilize that pathway.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
it's not safe to run on, it's,
So is it safe to say if we do the 23.9 that was put back in, that we make it a part of the operating budget going forward for Parks and Rec as just standard maintenance going forward and knowing that it needs to be done?
To be honest, I don't even know how much that's gonna get us. What, with Laura, Mary's departure and Laura being new, a lot of this kinda got missed this cycle. But it's a starting point. The idea in the past was to pave that path, so I don't know.
I think, so I'll put it out there. There's a lot of stuff that I took off because we didn't have any quotes. I was like, gone, we don't have active quotes. But then we are talking about important things like this walking trail and other things that need to be done.
This is also the back lot too. It's not.
It's not the whole thing, it was just the back lot.
It's repair back parking lot, Cadigan.
Spread, process, stone, roll, and compact.
And then a half-mile walking trail. So it's
Oh.
Which is why I think Ricky said $5,000 and then put $5,000 to just repair as we go going forward. But that was what his idea.
That back lot's bad. I mean.
The
I-
back lot's bad, the lighting
Yeah.
is horrendous. I mean, going back to the
So-
lighting, it's very dangerous.
So, to bring up your point is this even enough? And
If it's gravel, it's not paved,
Right.
it's gravel.
And it's just being tamped
So,
down.
yeah,
My thing would be, I'd hate to take things out because the departure of Mary and the start of Laura, and there was just this whole crossover of not quotes, old quotes, no notes, no info. It really was difficult. I don't want to not fund things just on the basis that we didn't get a quote. My one idea would be, can we go forward with the things that we agreed on, and if there are issues where, okay, well, 23.9 of gravel got us X. We could roll with what we've got, knowing that next year Laura's gonna say, okay, that didn't work, and this is what we need to do. And the same thing with the 40, Chris can come and say, well, we took it down, that's just nowhere near where we need to be. And
I mean,
I don't wanna not fund things, but I also, we just don't have a lot of information on a lot of the
In my
problems.
opinion, gravel's not a thing where you just don't do it or not do it. I mean, you
Right.
might not have enough gravel, but it's still gonna fix a lot
Correct.
of the problem.
Yeah.
Where it's, if
So
you
I
have
think-
a bathroom, you're either gonna do
I get it, or you're
not.
not.
Yeah.
So I think the 40 and the 23 can stay and be fine. And that knowing that we'll if it's not, we'll have to revisit it again. And again, maybe we do need to, if this is a comment, everybody says it's a yearly issue, that trail needs to be repaired, then if it's a yearly issue, it should be not
Yeah.
capital, it should be
But-
part of an operating budget.
But this might get it back up to, maintain a
Hopefully.
normal level.
Hopefully. And then again, the field lighting reserves, we were talking about energy grants for that kind of went back into that. Is there a better grant? Is there a better way to do it? They said the lighting system isn't energy efficient. This was a begin planning for replacement, so.
We did put the reserve, we kept the reserve.
We did. And then we wrote questions like maybe we could go after an energy, maybe there was a grant or something we could see if we could find. And then just funding the reserve for the Cadigan Park turf field replacement.
When does that do again?
We installed it in 2015 and it has a useful life of 15 years. So that will be due in 2030. So we are about 7 years before it comes
And
up
it's
again.
cheaper than the high school
Mm.
track, the one that we're doing this year.
Correct.
It's probably more in line with what last year's.
Correct.
That's just a field with no track.
Yes.
It's got two,
Yeah.
so I think
Oh, that's true.
there's 2 fields there. It's in good shape right now. It's in
Yeah.
terrible shape.
And we still have a good 7 years. So moving, and then obviously the Still River Greenway, we've been talking about the lot zip grants, the designs, the ECD, all that stuff. So I have notes about this DECD, but there's a new grant that came out that Greg found, which was that they pay for where before they did, that's what the 256.
That's the
Mhm.
lots of study.
Yeah, the lot zip study where before they had never paid for the design,
Yeah.
and there's a new grant that pays for the design. So, which before the town was on the hook for, and now it's not. So that was, but we had to pay a little bit of it. But he said he has to apply for it, and it was. I thought it was worth our while to go for that, considering it saved us a lot of money on the design aspect of it if we were to get approved. So, going to parks and school grounds. We really decided in this whole thing that we were going to make sure that we funded the Brookfield High School backfield turf reserve, and just fund the one big thing, which was the track and stadium field replace. It is in horrible shape.
I went to
I-
I went to a boys soccer game there. and
Yeah.
Kids don't want to play on the stadium field.
No.
They play on the back turf, and you're playing SWC, like one of the best teams in the SWC. They don't want to play.
Yeah, and the
It's
track,
bad.
the track
The
is.
track's bad too.
My son is, I've been on track for 4 years, and I go to other schools and I watch him.
When you go to Bethel, it's they compare us.
Well, even honestly, even New Milford High School's outdoor track is, you can really, it's breaking down underneath there. So my thing was I think if we fund this one big thing, we didn't approve anything else to fund. The budget proposal is from 2022. That was exciting and current. Again, it was, I think we decided one of the thought process I have was, I went back and forth, but again, this is where Glenn is obviously really amazing number guy, napkin math. If there was money left over in CLES school, and that was bought, maybe we could use some of that towards the track, towards that big amount, and then get they were wrote here year 23 revenue, the rest of it.
So one thing that I want to just point out here, that there was a discussion today about the timing of this, and they would like to start in May. And the way that it's funded now, if we do bonding, it can start as soon as the bond passes. If we do it out of next year's budget, let's say the column that goes all the way to the right, cash for capital, that has to wait, and they can't encumber any of that money till July 1st. So this, if we we don't want to switch the funding on this without thinking about it. The way it's written here, it should be able to, if it's approved in May, they should be able to go immediately into action.
Well, that's probably.
So that's, Marcia, what John was talking about earlier on in this evening. We're gonna have a meeting on Monday. The whole thing revolves around graduation. So I think now we're gonna try to wait. Laura had said that it's a 4-month project, but they can try to do it in 3. The idea obviously was to open before the fall, the start of the new year. But it looks like they're gonna want to have graduation on that field, so it won't start until after June, whenever graduation is.
And I mean, May, the track season is still going in May.
They were gonna go in right after the last event and start, but the
got it.
graduation, but now
Yeah.
they don't.
And
so
graduation, I think it's June 17th.
It's like,
Yeah, so,
We start September something.
yeah, September. So that's something to be discussed. There's always a,
There's always something else.
It's always a challenge of doing anything in the schools because
Yeah.
we have
Summer is
school,
short.
yeah, summer is short,
And every school wants to do all their projects then too. so.
Exactly.
absolutely. Okay, so that's just gotta be talked about. And again, I didn't fund any, we did that one big project and everything else was just kind of off the table at that point. So the public art funding reserves,
Sorry, can I go
Oh,
back?
sorry,
I
yes,
was
please.
reading about the netting between the baseball and the tennis courts. Like, how much of an issue is, I mean, it sounds like it could be an issue. I don't know how much of an issue it actually is, but Aaron, baseball is on a tennis game doesn't sound safe.
right.
And there's not a lot of
And,
space.
and that's the only 90 that we have in town, so
Yeah.
it's used a lot. That's a
Yeah.
great valid point.
And lighting, are we still hoping to get some sort of baseball field lighting out of Iroquois, or are we hoping to
Everything,
get anything
yes.
out of Iroquois?
that was
Yeah.
still a hoping for.
Iroquois is interested in purchasing a property we own down next to where they're gonna expand
Yeah.
their substation. Yeah, there's kind of Iroquois, there's a lot going on there. They still haven't gotten their environmental permits, so.
Okay. They've been at that for a while.
Yeah.
Right. They're thinking this summer.
So, there is no quote for the netting. I could not find one.
Oh.
And if it's missing, if I'm not seeing it, it's on me, but I could not find a quote for the netting. It is a, first year ask, but it did because they were worried about errant foul balls landing on the tennis courts, which is definitely a problem. So if we wanna revisit it and get a quote for it, but we don't have a quote, so I don't know
Okay.
if that 40 is,
I
it's
guess,
40,
yeah.
you know, or it's,
That's on
80.
the safety issue.
Did they ever put didn't we fund netting for Cadigan? When-
yes, I remember doing that.
I thought we funded 2 years
2
ago
years
netting,
ago.
There
netting,
is a
because
net
Dan
there
Graham
now.
came
There
and
is.
talked to us after we took it out.
There
There's
is
netting,
there.
yeah.
Oh, it is, for
Yes.
to run the
Softball.
baseball?
Softball, so it doesn't go to the soccer field. There's netting there
Okay.
It's new.
Yeah.
Ish.
Okay.
now. Yeah, newish, yeah.
We
Okay.
could probably look and see how much that cost us and
That might
the
be-
company that did it and maybe get a quick quote / a ballpark figure.
Mhm.
I think
Thank
that's done
you.
a lot bigger than what we would.
It is,
do
but
here,
maybe-
I assume.
But maybe if we called them and it might be like 3 jumps faster then, and just if they threw out a number and if it's surprisingly close to what's here, or
Yeah.
I know I won't even say less, because why would it be? No, but less.
Stranger things have happened.
Listen, I'll go for it. Anything else before I move on to this? I know. So the Arts Commission, so this is funding for statues at certain areas of town, and one of the ones we talked about was like the Pocket Park.
Yep.
They wanted, in your capital books, they showed examples of some statues that they were thinking of. And they felt that they needed the full 70, and that because I guess it was easier to get that and then pick and choose what they wanted all over town. One of my suggestions to them that I thought was, because they had sent all these pictures over was, have we reached out to local town artists? I am not artsy in any way, shape, or form. I am, I'm not even good at stick figures, but I know that if I was an artist and the Arts Commission reached out to me, I might be excited to, sculpt something or design something, and maybe it wasn't $70,000, or, maybe we could do something great and to have that person design it. So there was a couple of questions thrown out, and I think we settled on 25, thinking, why don't you try one? The Pocket Park issue is that it is state property, so Greg said when he was there that night, while it wouldn't be a problem, we still have to get their permission to put a statue on there. So we just seemed as though there were things that needed more permissions. We couldn't just guess, hey, you throw a statue on here and we all love it and this is great. Now you need all these approvals. So we thought that 25,000, and then the Board of Selectmen adjusted it down to 20. They would be able to get some sort of a statue to put in a potential area that wouldn't maybe involve the state's provision.
And this is a recurring request, so it's 70 for 3 years. It
Yes.
sounds. And if you look in the back of the book, the reason why we went with the lower number is there's 20, we could go 23 for smaller replacements. So
Correct.
we could start with a smaller,
And the other thing, they came forward to the Board of Selectmen and discussed grant opportunities and other things, so there's a lot out there in the state arena
Yeah.
where they're really trying to fund the arts. I think it's important that we do provide for them, especially with the ARPA funding, because going back to the beginning of the whole ARPA allocation, arts was a category that was included, and their request happened to be on the ad hoc committee's list. So the same thing with the library patio. It's like, okay,
Right.
it's, we need to address these
And
things.
we're funding a lot of sports things, and
Right.
that's a limited population.
We need to make sure that we
Yep.
go across the way. And then obviously the invasive species we talked about last night, that offset theirs. Bob just stepped out for a second, but the Board of Education's capital was it was paving and restrooms. It was stuff that, it wasn't anything that we haven't seen or heard of before. So,
It's amazing how nice the pavement is when you have the new pavement at the schools. It's so noticeable.
I'm looking forward to the
Sometimes you
Muskeneer.
get
I was just about to
Yeah.
say, I don't miss going and picking up Jake at the Skinner, like the pothole. You're like, I'm awake now.
Have you been up there?
You gotta really, I told him, I said, you have to go and visit, Principal Rennie before you graduate. And he's like, yeah. And I said, but you also have to really watch where you're going because it's gonna swallow your car.
Parent pickup at Huckleberry goes halfway up Kennewood Lake Road every afternoon.
It does.
Yeah.
Every day.
I mean, I remember a parent pickup at Kenwood at Center, and you'd go all the way around and then this little kid just opened the door to come out.
I made my kids ride the bus. We're half a mile up the hill and made them ride the
Now he
bus.
just drives himself to school every day.
Yeah, we usually make them take the bus.
He took the bus every day until he got his car, and then I was like, oh. I mean, he really walked, and once he got to high school, he walked because where he lives.
My oldest likes to read on the bus, so he's been offered rides home. He's like, I'd rather just sit.
God
in the bus
bless him.
than
I
read
get
on my
cursed
computer."
every day. So, really, unless you need Bob to explain paving and concrete, that's it. That's the capital.
Okay, good job.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, I am not really good at, I don't know how, I'm not good at public group speaking.
I think he did
The
fine.
whole committee did great work on capital.
But I think we have some good things, and I don't want to obviously put Laura in the hot seat, but if there's any way to find some of them,
Yeah.
I think we could get some of it funded. And I know that she was great, and Tuesday night, she was really fantastic. I really enjoyed her presentation, and she said she's happy with her budget on her own, so feel if we can get a little bit more answer for her. And that netting is important. If we could figure out a way to maybe get the netting and do a little couple of other things, I think it's important.
Your new hires have been great. I mean, between Rochelle and Aaron and
They're fantastic.
Fantastic.
That was a good one, Erin. Was
Great.
So that's, do you guys want to do anything? It's 9. I'm happy to go on a couple more, or if you want to
Yeah, I don't,
Tuesday is police, fire, Candlewood and
Yeah.
Center Fire,
right.
and,
Is EMS included in?
and EMS too, sorry,
Okay,
yeah.
so all of our
And then,
policies.
Wednesday, we were gonna leave just library,
Mhm.
and then that's it. So, and then obviously we'll go back to capital.
Mhm.
I would think Wednesday, Thursday might buy us some time.
I agree.
Library, I know we'll have a whole board here to kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%, so, I'm game to go forward or not, whatever you guys
Whatever
want.
you guys want.
You're in charge, Eileen. I turn the meeting back over to you.
You, Dan?
And I did go back.
Dan?
Yeah.
You got anything?
I've been listening to the whole thing. Great job, Brianna.
Thanks, Dan.
I'd be fine stopping and
Okay.
digging back in next week, but you guys are in
Perfect,
the
yeah.
room, so.
I'm
never
okay
mind.
with that.
I think I'm okay with that.
I
too.
did go back and find Glenn's email from January 3rd. It was sort of an unofficial, like some of the dates you had asked about, Dan.
Yes.
He had on there if we need a public hearing before the budget, that would be March 30th. Annual town
Sorry,
meeting.
but,
The annual town meeting would be the first Tuesday in May, which is May 2nd.
Yep.
And the referendum would be planned for May 16th.
gotcha.
Those were, I think, was that the
Thank you.
unofficial
That
one
was
that
the
Marcia
unofficial
had
one,
sent
so
out? Yeah.
as long as nothing changed with, but I'm assuming that the referendum date seems pretty much what we always do, that Tuesday.
Yeah.
We always do the annual town meeting the 2 weeks before that. So those two.
Yeah, I have that. She had sent out an email, like, I think in December too, just saying kind of, by the way the charter looks, and it was all highlighted. I couldn't pull it
Yeah.
because it's tiny on my phone. But, yeah.
So the Board of Finance public hearing on the 30th. How did we do that last year? You guys,
I
Did
think
it
it
in
did it at the
conjunction with-
BHS
Auditorium.
auditorium. I wasn't there. 'cause I was-
Yeah.
so
I was
it'll
in
happen on its own before the special town meeting, or?
Yeah, so we go over it, we just present everything to the
Yeah.
town. Usually we make Dan do it,
Yeah,
because
because
he's
he's
such a good
awesome.
speaker.
You can't really set up to it.
And
Yeah, if there's capital
is
over $1
separate.
million, that would be that March 30th also.
I'm not,
That was,
it'll still be Dan. You guys have got, you wanna talk about deer in headlights. Dan's gonna go down right in front of everybody. All right. If we have, it doesn't matter, so if we wanna,
yeah.
it's your
let's-
call.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.